Welcome to the Sisterhood of Sweat. I am live today with Heather Monahan, and I'm really excited about this interview because she's talking about one of my favorite subjects, creating confidence. I always think that if we had more confidence, we would accomplish more in our lives, and building it is the key to being successful. Heather is a best-selling author, keynote speaker, entrepreneur, and founder of Boss and Heels. Having successfully climbed the corporate ladder for nearly 20 years, Heather Monahan is one of the few women to break the glass ceiling and claim her spot in the C-suite. As a chief revenue officer in media, Heather Monahan is a Glass Ceiling Award winner, named one of the most influential women in radio in 2017. And Thrive Global named her a limit-breaking female founder. I'm going to say that again. They named her a limit-breaking female founder in 2018. I love that. Heather's new book, Confidence Creator, shot to #1 on Amazon's business biographies and business motivation list the first week it debuted on Amazon. Heather is a confidence expert and is currently working with Fortune 500 companies and professional sports to develop confidence in the workplace and on the court. I am really excited to have you on the show today. Welcome, Heather.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, I want to really dive in right away to your story, your backstory, how you even started to write this book and where you found yourself basically fired and devastated and wondering what you were going to do next.
Right. That's exactly where I started writing the book. I had really achieved a very high level of success in corporate America. I was responsible for hundreds of millions of dollars in my pipeline and revenue for the company I was working for 14 years. I was consistently promoted till I reached the highest point in the company. And when the founder became ill, he elevated his daughter to CEO, and she immediately terminated me. And I had no idea that was coming. So yeah, it was a really scary time to reevaluate. I was 42 at the time, or 43, 42 or 43. And I thought to myself, I've never gone to work for myself. I've always worked for someone else. And so many times in my career, I found myself in a position where I felt, these people don't know what they're doing. Why aren't they listening to me? We need to take some risks. We need to innovate. And I was frustrated for many years in that corporate America environment. And I just decided, you know what, I'm going to be really vulnerable and put out to the world that I was fired and I need some help. That was the first step that I took. And it was really smart because when I put that out on social media, I had thousands of responses and thousands of people trying to help me. And I learned in that moment, it's really critical to convert. Instead of saying, oh, thanks so much. Yeah, I'll get back with you if I think of something. People move on with their life and then they're going to forget that they had offered you some olive branch. So it's really critical to capitalize in that moment and say, hey, Jim, yes, I do need your help. Could you introduce me to so-and-so? Could you get me this? Ask for one specific thing and convert that into an opportunity. And one of those instances was Froggy from the Elvis Duran show tweeted at me, hey, if I can help, I'm here for you. And I said, sure, can you get me on the show? And I didn't know what I would say when I got there. I just know one thing from media: the larger audience you have, the more reach you have, the more opportunity you create for yourself. So he said yes, and he got me on the Elvis Duran show right thereafter. And I went on the show not knowing what was going to happen. But what really happened was, and now looking back on it, taking bold moves and believing in yourself and having faith that things are going to work out is the answer. I didn't know that at the time. I was just trying to create opportunity and scramble to figure out what I would do. But now that I look back, I was moving forward in faith that things were going to work out and they were going to work out for me. And when I was on that show, halfway through, Elvis Duran said, with his 10 million listeners listening to the show, hey, Heather, obviously you've got a book coming out. When's it going to come out? Now, I did not have a book coming out at the time. I had just been fired. It hadn't even been a month. And I said, well, yes, Elvis, of course I have a book coming out and it'll be out within a year. And I didn't know how to write a book. I wasn't an author at the time. And I just figured, okay, I got on the plane leaving New York, heading back to Miami. I Googled, how do you write a book? And basically, I'll save everybody a lot of time. You just have to sit down and write. There's no, so many people want to get caught up in, well, what is the strategy or what's, the layout? That's all, ways to freeze you and stop you from actually getting it done. I sat and wrote, and I wrote for 4 to 5 hours a day. That was the commitment I made, that I would do this for a month and just see what happens. And within a month, it was really clear what I was writing about. I was writing about my lowest moments in my life and how I had leveraged those moments to create confidence and create more opportunity in my life, and how I was going to do it again this time. And I mocked up a book, and I just put, white paper around it and wrote my name on the bottom so I could visualize that this is something I'm creating. And it was only 3 months before I had written my book, and then I need to find an editor. And that's kind of how it all unfolded.
I love that. Now, when you first found yourself fired, and I mean, most of us would go into panic mode, and, it could be a divorce, it could be anything, but my friend Tim Story calls it a life interruption. So when your life has been interrupted by something totally unexpected, how is that basically a setup for you to go further in life, instead of like where you feel like you're going back, like maybe I should go back, I should get this other job, I should try to be an executive at this company? How did you not go back, but basically come back and move forward?
So the first instinct that I had, my career and everything I knew was corporate America. My first instinct was, the day that I got fired, when I was crying, okay, who do I want to call right now? I'm going to go become a chief revenue officer at my competitors. And then I thought, holy cow, I have a non-compete. And my non-compete was a 12-month non-compete I had to sign. When you get to that level in any publicly traded company, you have to sign a contract, and you have to forego some of your right in order to take on that position. So I had foregone the opportunity to compete against that company in media and everything I knew for 1 year. So I was thinking, okay, well, I was panicking. Okay, if I can't go work for my competitors, I can do something similar. How can I get around? And I was really focusing that first day on how can I get around that non-compete and maybe a similar industry, working for someone else. And I was going back and forth with this. How can I get back to that safe space? When in actuality, it wasn't so safe. When you're working for someone else, anyone can fire you anytime they want, right? Doesn't matter how good you are or not. The company
Right.
purchase, there's a million different things that can occur. I see that now 2 years later. It's actually going to be my 2-year anniversary of being fired this Saturday. And, it's very clear to me now, it was not then. And when you're highly emotional, it's a very bad time to make any decision, because you're coming from a place of emotion instead of a place of business and, thinking in a factual way. So it's easy. We all know that person we've seen get fired or go through a breakup, and we're saying, okay, take a deep breath. You need to get your bearings about you. You're panicking, and it's so clear to us. But when you're in it, it is so difficult to have that same self-awareness and strength. It does take a little bit of time. And so I decided to give myself 30 days. I didn't know what I was going to do, but that was the first thing I decided. I would make a 30-day plan. I'm always about taking action. And my first action was, like I said, I put on social media immediately that I needed help. That was really smart. Be vulnerable, take action, ask for help. The next thing that I did was I laid out 30 squares, and I created a grid for 30 days. And I thought, I'm going to create a vision for how I'm going to feel and look at the end of 30 days. I'm starting at like a zero baseline right now. I'm miserable. I'm shaking. I'm crying. And I feel like I lost everything. However, I do know this from other challenges I've had in my life and things I've seen just through experience in business. In 30 days, so much can change. So give yourself that window, Heather, to fit, I've got enough runway that I can make it through 30 days. I'm going to live. And I just focus on that really finite window. And I put into practice all the things that I know that work: being grateful, surrounding myself with people that love me and lift me up, sharing my challenges with others so that they might have ideas and offer to help and assist me, really becoming the most true, authentic version of myself. And in those times, in that really finite window of 30 days, so much transition. And what I've come to learn is that woman thought she fired me that day. In actuality, I fired the number one villain in my life that day. That this woman had hated me and, talked behind my back and tried to hold me down and wanted me to play small. And I had appeased her in some ways because she was the daughter of the CEO. She was my peer as the CFO, but there was a dynamic there because I wasn't a relative and she was. So I would consistently, now that I look back, it's clear now, I would try to shrink myself to make her feel a little bit better. So then she'd leave me alone. And that would work for windows of time, but then she would get stronger. So then she'd want me to shrink smaller. And then there was this cat and mouse game. And through all of it, I decided at one point, you know what, I'm going to launch a personal brand. Every other major CRO, the Bank of America, all these huge companies, they all have personal brands. I need to have one too. So a little over a year before I got fired, which is really the tipping point to why I got fired, I launched my personal brand. And by investing in myself, elevating myself, and shining my light to help others, that put her over the edge. But what it did for me is I was investing in me. I was becoming stronger. And during that time, I started stepping into a more powerful version of myself. And I really created a large social outreach. And it's so important for anyone listening to this right now, invest in you first, because any company can fire you today or tomorrow. You own that personal brand. You own your story, and you can take that wherever you go. So when you invest in you, that's forever. When you're investing in your company, someone you work for, that's for them. And that's a big transition that I've made in my life now that I own my own company. Every day I used to say, oh, I have to leave my son and I have to give up this and I have to. Today I look at work as I get to. And the reason why is I get to invest in me for the long run. And yes, I might give up and sacrifice certain things, but it's for this long-term investment in me, in my company. And you can do that today while working for another company. When you create your own brand, you elevate and shine your light, you create content on LinkedIn, which is the most phenomenal marketplace for business interchange, and everyone should be on there and rocking it every day. But, really just invest in you no matter where you are in your career or your life right now, because that investment always pays off.
Oh, 100%. And I know in the book you talk about how, like, being married, being single, being a corporate executive, being a worker, being a mom, there are labels. And a lot of times we're kind of wrapped up in our label and we forget that it is really important to invest in yourself in case something happens. What would you have, right? You basically, you have nothing if somebody just kicks you out, except you have yourself. But I mean, just carrying these labels with us, thinking that we don't need to invest in ourselves, is kind of putting yourself at risk.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And, those labels go back to our childhood when I was the social one and my sister was the smart one. And we all have these labels that we've been living with our whole life. It's so important to become aware of those labels and know that you can hand them back to whoever told you, that you were the social one and you're supposed to be in sales. I've realized now that everything is sales. And so I'm blessed to be great at sales because there's a million books out there, right? And the authors that sell books are the ones that succeed. The authors that have great books that no one knows about don't necessarily succeed. So you may find that your unique talent and what's fantastic about you can be taken to a variety of different places when you decide to hand back the labels, be who you are, and show up and take chances on you. And that's exactly what's happened for me. I never thought I could be an author because I wasn't the smart one or the literary one, and I didn't study English. But it turned out you don't need to do that to have a best-selling book. You need to step into whoever you are, own your strengths, own your power, and take a chance on you, and then just keep taking action to pursue it and build it. And in the end, you'll find that, the same thing that made me successful in corporate America as a leader makes me really successful as an entrepreneur. I just decided to smash through the lanes, take the chance, and believe in myself.
Yeah, and I truly have had the same thing happen to to me, where literally where you said you got fired, mine felt like being fired. Basically, the guy was like, we no longer take private contractors here as of whatever date. And I built my business up in there for 5 years. And I remember crying the entire night. But what I cried about, now I celebrate, because there would be no Sisterhood of Sweat. There would not be this big fitness boutique for women. There wouldn't be the community. There wouldn't be the podcast, the book. Because you know what? Sometimes when you get kicked out of the nest, you just got to fly. And it was the best thing that could have ever happened to me. And it sounds like the best thing that could have ever happened to you.
Yeah, I will tell people it hasn't been easy. You know, that's the one thing people will say to me, oh, it's only been 2 years and look what you've achieved. I work so extremely hard. It's, you know, it definitely is not a layup. And there's so many times where I'm panicked. I'm constantly reinventing myself. I first started as an author. That was the first thing I began with, because I know I need a product to sell, right? To create revenue, you need a product. And I had a personal brand, luckily, because I'd invested in myself. So I had a decent sized social media audience. You know, these are all things you need to start thinking about before you make that leap. And you know, I got the product, I had the book out, and I was out hustling, selling the book. And I realized that speaking engagements sell books. So then I got picked up by GDA Speakers and Harry Walker's speaker agency. So now I'm in a whole new arena. How do I price myself? Who do I, you know, am I worth the amount of money I'm asking for? Should I be on a website with Bill Clinton as a speaker? I don't know that I deserve this. You know, then you're flooded with all of this fear again. And that's really, you know, there's all these highs and lows where you know, the book does really well and I was excited. And then I started as a speaker and I was scared to charge people. I didn't know if I was worth it. And then, you know, I started doing it slowly. And then it came back to bite me that I didn't charge people when I first started, because then everyone wanted me to speak for free. And then how was I making my money? So you go through these mistakes and pivots and falls and failures and get back up. And through those are really scary times. But, you know, I'm 2 years in Saturday, and I will tell you, the other day I was facing another major change and fear. And when it hit me, I took a step back and said, Heather, you know that fear means you're growing. And if you're growing, something really good's going to come. You've got to keep going, you know? And so now I'm starting, and it's still not easy, but I'm getting used to, it's like people say, love the journey, embrace the journey. Well, my journey is scary as all heck because I'm growing so fast. So it's, you know, I came from a 14-year run where I wasn't growing at all. In fact, I was being told to decline in order to keep my position, right? So I went from this comfortable zone. It wasn't comfortable, it was horrible, but it was comfortable because I knew my paycheck. I was in a well-lit environment. I knew who the jerks were. I just had to steer clear of them, you know, so that was what I knew, to now this environment that's really dark and I have to determine and pivot. And I mean, today I had this huge opportunity. It was mind blowing that came to me, and it wasn't enough money and I wanted it so bad, but my mind told me, my instinct told me, and you need to listen to your instinct, Heather, you're worth more than this. And I had to respond. I am so appreciative that you are considering me for this amazing, mind blowing opportunity. However, here is my rate structure and fees. And I'd love to work this out. You know, can we get the contract revised with these new numbers? And now I'm waiting to see what they respond. You know, I don't know. But I've also known that until you start determining your own worth and knowing it and owning it, no one else is really going to give you what you think you're worth.
I love that. I love that. Isn't that a key part of confidence?
Yeah, if you don't believe wholeheartedly in yourself, why would anybody else? People are going to treat you the way that you treat yourself. So if you're that person that's out there with your head down and feeling badly and not thinking that life is fair, guess what? It's not going to be. And you know what? People are going to treat you like that too. Oh, that poor person over there, geez, life's not fair for them. And they're going to keep going with their opportunities and go find people with their head up that are saying, oh yeah, life is freaking amazing because I'm creating it that way. And I'm stepping into my power, and whoever wants to roll with me, let's roll. And those are the people will be gravitating towards that individual saying, hey, can I be a part of what you're doing? I love your energy. I love what you're about, you know, and the more you become who you really are, whether it be an artist, or maybe you're someone who loves being with children, or maybe you're someone who loves creating projects, step into that superpower you have, and the right people will start gravitating towards you. You'll start feeling better about yourself. But the longer you stay sitting behind an Excel spreadsheet, let's say, when you're really supposed to be an artist, the worse you're going to feel about yourself, and the worse your confidence is. It's going to chip away your confidence and ultimately, you know, put you in a negative way that is going to create more negativity for your future.
Let's talk about the whole dimming your light thing for a moment. Like in the book, I love the story you tell about the dog, how I think it was your brother telling you to run at, or maybe it was your fiance, at a barking dog. Like if it was barking at you, and like to, instead of running away from it, to run at it. And I love the way you form this analogy. Can you share it with the audience?
Yeah, sure. So I was 20 years old back then. So this is a really long time ago. That was a boyfriend that I had at the time
Okay.
who happened to be a police officer. And these guys are very well trained, right? And when you're being attacked, what is the right solution? So he knew I ran all the time. Sometimes, 7 o'clock at night, it was getting dark and he was getting worried about me. So he said, listen, if you ever have a major animal, come at you, unless there's white foam coming from their mouth, which means they're sick and, there's a problem, you have to exert all of your strength and show them you are the dominant one. And instead of running, you won't be able to outrun them. Turn and run at them and yell at them and point at them like a maniac, because you have to show you're the alpha. And it sat with me, and it was so interesting that he shared that with me. I thought, okay, not sure why you're telling me this, but okay, wouldn't you know? I mean, it was literally within a week or two after that, I had a Rottweiler broke free of his chain. It was so scary, but it happened so fast. I knew to remember what he told me. And this dog was barreling at me, and the owner just came to the door and opened it. And there was no way, the owner wasn't anywhere near, going to be able to get that dog. And that dog came at me full speed ahead. And all I thought was, I have no chance to outrun. I have to show that I'm the alpha. And I went at that dog. I was 20 years old. 100 miles an hour, screaming at, you go home, going crazy at that dog. And I got so close to that dog. And when I got really, really close, it was close, that dog turned around and whimpered back, crying back to his house. And I stood there in absolute shock, and so did the owner. And the owner grabbed the dog and took the dog inside. It was the craziest thing, but it taught me a lesson for business and in life that, people will bully you, people will come at you and treat you the way you allow for. And sometimes when you give them that leeway to make fun of you or put you down, they're getting stronger. And like the Rottweiler, they're going to start coming at you harder and harder. And you're kind of whimpering away, and they're going to bring you down. Instead, you need to stand up for yourself, turn around and say, oh, heck no, I'm coming at you. And once you do that and make it clear, people will start stepping back and leaving you alone.
I love it. And it's a great story and a great analogy. Wow. So let's talk just a little bit about, you had some kind of an episode at the office where you used this analogy.
So I was in the wine business when I was in my early 20s. I was probably 21, probably a year after the story, maybe 22. And I was doing really, really well. There was 100 people on our sales team. And there was 3 that were women, and I was one of them. So obviously it was easy to be different just being a woman and showing up. Also, I really embrace wearing my hair down, wearing my makeup, wearing skirts and dresses. And I was brought in one day to the office. And mind you, I was the #1 seller of the month that month. And I was doing so well. It was very clear whatever I'm doing is working. And I was brought in by a peer, not a manager, but a peer, and happened to be one of the other 2 women. One was a good friend of mine. This other woman hated me, and I knew it. She was just like the lady that fired me, by the way. And so she brought me in, asked me to go to a meeting, and I sat down with her, not wanting to be there. And I was, okay, what is this about? And she said, well, I want to say that you're not representing the company well. And the manner in which you look and dress is a detriment. And no one is going to take, and I'm paraphrasing because this is 20 something years ago, I don't remember exactly, but essentially this was the message, is that you being you, Heather, isn't going to work for us. And you being you is wrong. And you being you, is not going to make you successful in business. And you can't be you, and you can't be, everything about you is wrong. The way you look, the way you handle yourself. And you need to change it and be more like me, or be more like men, because that's how she was. She wore pants to work every day, and she had short hair and very little makeup. And well, today I don't have makeup on, but if I'm out in a meeting, I always do. That's just part of what makes me feel good. So, she was telling me basically that I was going to fail if I'm me. And if I want to succeed, be her. And so I listened as long as I could. And I finally said, I'm done. I'm done here. And I stood up and said, if you have nothing else to say, I'm done. I'm going to go ahead and continue moving forward being me. You continue moving forward and being you. Wishing you the best of luck. I'm going to continue, being #1. Thanks. peace out, I'm out of here. And I walked out of that meeting and I was livid. But I'll tell you, I made her feel uncomfortable in the end because what she was saying to me was ridiculous. And it was unfortunate that it came from another woman. However, what is interesting now after my career, you know, and this is so interesting with the Me Too movement, we keep focusing on men harassing women. In my experience, the worst and biggest bullies and most brutal people I've ever faced in corporate America have been other women, not men. And men, you know, we create them as the target that they're the ones to look out for, but women are, and not all women, obviously, but there are a lot of them that are insecure. They don't feel good about themselves. They feel threatened. And when you're threatened by someone, you're going to make that person your target. They're stealth and sneaky. You know, they calculate their little plans and have their people that they try to work with to sabotage other women. And you know, they're catty. And so for me, that experience started at a young age that I was able to see that there are women like this. And, you know, I don't believe in letting anyone bulldoze someone else. And I started standing up for myself back then at a very young age.
Wow. And, you know, in Jordan Peterson's book, he talks a lot about that women, and its statistics, and he has a lot of research to back it up. They attack by trying to defame your reputation, gossip, and scheming, and all these things. So it's a lot harder to deal with because it's underhanded and sneaky, like you said.
Exactly.
And yeah, so it is a reality. I mean, I'm trying to get us to all build each other up and come to the table and share our strengths and celebrate them, rather than this whole underhanded, she's better than me at sales, so I've got to do everything I can to make her, pull her down so I can be up.
Yeah, it's so true. It's an amazing phenomenon that I wasn't prepared for when I initially went into the workforce, but now I want to make sure other women are prepared for it because, you know, like you said, there's a lot of people like you who are out there trying to build and connect women to support other women. And there are so many great women out there. So I don't want people to think that this is, you know, everyone is this way. It's not the case. That's what makes it hurt so bad, is that you're taken aback when it actually happens, that, oh my gosh.
It's really unexpected. You're not expecting it.
It is so unexpected because we do know so many great women and we help so many great women, and we should keep surrounding ourselves with those people. It's just, you got to go in eyes wide open and know not everyone's going to be that way.
Right. It's so true. So true. And I think being prepared is half the battle, and also having strategies like you outline in your book. I really like where you say to fire the villains in your life. Why should we fire the villains?
I found that firing the villain is probably the biggest impact that I've had in my life to turn things from negative to positive. When I fired that villain from my life that day that she thought she fired me, the most wonderful people started showing up for me. And I truly believe, now that I look back at it, that when you have negative energy around you and people holding you back and trying to hold you down and stab you in the back, somehow that blocks good people from coming in. And I don't know if it's just energy or what, but there is a seismic shift when you get rid of negative people from your life, people who really aren't with you, fake people. When you cut those people out of your life, it's like cutting a weight off your foot. You take off, and suddenly so much opportunity just starts arising around you. Things came easy for me initially in some regard, like the Elvis Duran show coming, or like Maria Menounos put me on her show, like all these crazy things that never happened for me before when I was back in corporate America. These opportunities just started showing up. And I thought, why is this stuff happening now? And for the past 20 years, nothing. I was always in the grind. And yeah, I worked hard, but nothing amazing just showed up. Maybe it's because I was surrounded by villains and I wasn't realizing it. So identify your villains, find a way to fire them immediately. And if, you know, people say my number one villain's in my family, okay, then you need to create boundaries and protect yourself, because it doesn't matter who that person is. You've got to take action to change this so that you can set yourself up to take off.
How do we identify our villains?
Well, the best way for me was journaling, because you're your most real self when you're alone with you, right? And a lot of us feel nervous that, you know, oh, the CFO is coming around. I should be nice to her and smile and say hello. Well, I guess she wasn't that mean to me today. I guess it's okay, right? You start convincing yourself everything's fine because you're out in the meetings and you're trying to look good and join in with everyone. But then when I would get home, I'd write in my journal and I'd say, I feel terrible when I have to see her. She's always giving me these awful looks. She doesn't say hello to me in the morning. Why do I feel like this? And then other days I'd be like, I feel great today. And I wasn't around that person. And I started noticing as I would reflect on my journal, wow, I get into a really negative mindset when I'm going to a meeting and this woman will be there. I wonder why that is. And it's really becoming self-aware of how you feel in different situations around different people. And then the more you're aware of it, the more you can start taking note, especially once you've done it once and seen it once. It's so clear moving forward. When I went into a spin class the other day and the energy of the instructor did not match with mine. And I thought, I'm out of here. I'm not going to enjoy the class. Peace out. And I went and took a different class and I felt so happy. Become aware of how you respond to energy, how you respond to people, how you respond to how people treat you, and really start noticing. And for me, journaling was the way to document that so that I could notice patterns. And once I saw the pattern really went back to her, being around her made me feel bad inside. So, I can't change her. I can change me, or I can change my situation. And the best result for me was firing her from my life.
So how do you get the courage to fire the villains?
Give yourself a deadline, hold yourself accountable, you make a decision. If you like how you're living, all right, then don't fire them. I guess it's not causing you that much harm, right? If you don't like how things are going and you're not happy with the villain there, give yourself a deadline. Hold yourself accountable to another person. When I wanted to write my second book, but I wasn't doing it, I went on social media and said, I'm writing my second book, because I knew people would start asking me all. I held myself accountable on social media. You don't have to do it that way, but you can do it with a good friend, someone who supports you, and say, I'm writing this down today and I'm putting it on my coffee table. And it says, I am firing this villain by such and such date. And I'm signing it. I'm making a commitment to myself. And I'm sharing this with 3 people in my life that I love, that I know will support me. I know they're going to check in with me. And I know they'll strategize about how the conversation is going to go so I can role play it, so I can become comfortable. And then I'm going to visualize it happening. And I'm going to see myself take off in my mind. And I'm going in and doing it.
That's really good. That's really good. Because I know there's a lot of us out there that may recognize our villains, but we're not really sure how to fire them or get rid of them or disconnect from them. So having a strategy around that is really key. I love how in the book you're so real and raw, and you just really you put it out there. You tell all of your experiences, good and bad. And at one point you got divorced and you're like, it's not a good feeling. Like you feel alone, you feel afraid. You maybe thought your marriage was going to last forever. Can you kind of take us to that time in your life and tell us how you got through it?
Sure. So I had a 1-year-old child, a baby, and I was, at the very highest level, an executive in the company, same company that I was fired from. And so I was uncertain as a mother because I was a new mom, which is, it's like a new job. You're trying to figure it out and find your way. And I felt very uncertain. I didn't feel confident as a mother yet. And so I felt scared about how can I juggle this with my career. My travel was massive. I was traveling every single week. And then I thought, and now I'm divorced. While we have shared custody and he would take him a few nights a week, I still had to figure out, how do I manage my flight schedules with somebody watching? What if something happens and I'm out of town? It was extremely stressful. And then it was 08, 09, the recession. And the company I worked for laid off a third of the workforce, cut my pay along with everybody else's. And then the building I lived in, people started defaulting and going bankrupt. So the people that remained owning their homes, as I did, we had to take on that debt from the other homes that went bankrupt. So my fees and my expenses were going up very high. My income was dropping and my stress level was off the charts. So luckily I journaled back then, and I used those journals as strength now to say, holy cow, you got through this. You could totally get through this now, Heather. So it's so important to document those tough times because they can be leverage and inspiration for you for your own growth in the future. And it's really worked that way for me. So I started simple. I started with small. I always think small when you get scared. So let's have a 30-day plan. How am I going to get through the next month? I can handle the next month. I know that I can do it. I need to make some adjustments to my spending. I need to start looking for growth opportunities. How can I get my revenues back where they were and beyond that? And taking those very small steps to save where you can. But I also don't believe in shutting everything down and just going into panic mode. Don't spend any money. Don't do anything. That's not going to solve the problem. The opportunity is, okay, where could I make more money here? Open your eyes to how can I grow from here, not just how can I retract and cut back. And luckily, because my job and career has been around revenue generation, I instantly go to that space. And it's really important for everyone to go to that space, because the more you think about lack of and loss, the more you're probably going to stay there. The more you think about growth and growing and opportunity, the more your mind will go there, and you'll start figuring out ways to accelerate yourself. And eventually, it's all those baby steps and those small changes and taking action every day and showing up every day. You will get stronger every day, and you'll have that 30-day plan, and then you'll go to the next 30 days, and then you document all of it, and you see your growth and you see the opportunities you create, and that builds momentum. And all of those small little baby steps really create that momentum that allow you to build back up to where you were before, and then eventually move beyond it.
I love it. And I have a friend going through something like that right now. And we were just having this conversation, and she was feeling that she needed to cut back, and she needed to, it's an overwhelm, like when you're getting divorced and you've got to figure everything out. And I love how you said not to focus on the scarcity, but the growth that could come from it, because it's true. It's really what you focus on, what you bring to yourself more of. And if you focus on growing, you're going to grow. And it can be a time of learning as well.
Absolutely. And you look back at, any of the most successful billionaires and investors in the world, the moments where they really took off and grew is in those recession moments, in those depression moments, in these panic moments where everyone else says, I'm going to shut down and sell everything and live under a rock. That's when they picked their heads up and said, hang on, there's an opportunity here somewhere, because everyone else is panicking. I'm going to stay calm, and I'm going to pick my head up and look around. Okay, if everyone's defaulting on their mortgages, maybe I'm going to swoop in and start picking up some of these properties, for nothing. Just pick your head up to see where business is going and change is happening. And instead of putting your head under that rock and hiding. And that's the first step in figuring out the solution.
I love that. I love that. And I can see, when you start to flip that switch, as you talk about in one of your chapters, that, like I had this thing come through, Les Mills was talking about how instructors, and gyms, mostly it's the 30-something crowd. And that is the majority, like 80% of the gym, and I thought about it, and I was thinking about it for a little bit, because, I'm 56, and I thought, oh my gosh, that's such an opportunity. Instead, that is an opportunity for me. I'm going to reach out to all the people that don't feel comfortable in the 20, 30-something gym, that feel forgotten, and that want to work out with a seasoned veteran. And so I think it's just flipping the switch on your situation and seeing there are opportunities almost in everything, I think.
Business is all about solving a problem that somebody else hasn't solved yet, right? And so you just identified that, people were solving the problem for 20 and 30-year-olds, but it hadn't been solved for the 50-year-olds. So create that solution so it's solved for them, and ask yourself that question. Whatever you're frustrated with, everybody else is probably frustrated with too. So instead of just being frustrated about it, say, how can I turn this into a business? How can I create a solution around this problem? And that's when you really start to innovate.
Yeah, I love it. And what is the biggest thing that has surprised you from writing this book that has come your way?
The biggest thing that has surprised me, there's been so many things I don't even know. When it first started, it's so weird because it's been 2 years and now I'm used to getting amazing notes from people, which is mind blowing because that never happened in my old career ever. But when it first started happening, when the book first came out and I would read the feedback on DMs and reviews and whatnot, and I would cry. Every single day I would cry because I went from a life where I was chasing a paycheck to a life where I was living passion first, helping first, positive first. And it was overwhelming from an emotional standpoint how rewarding that was. And I didn't know, everyone had said, you know, oh, chase your passion and the money will come. But I couldn't see it until the day I got fired and was forced to find it, right? So it really is true. When you lead a purpose-driven, passion-driven life, even if you don't know what that is yet, for me, I remember years ago when I was in corporate America, a friend said to me, pick your head up, you're bigger than what you're doing, and gravitate towards what you love. Try doing some charity work, Heather. You'd like to help people. And I joined a charity. And that really started me down a new path of not just run this company and do this job and build value for the stock. Instead, I was saying, I love doing other things too. And I'm going to spend a little bit of time doing that. And then that's when I started speaking a lot, was when I joined the charity. And when I would speak, I'd feel so powerful. And I started noticing, I'm really good at this. But then I'd forget about it and go back to work. But there are all these little cues along my life, and I'm sure everybody listening has these too. Start thinking about, what were those moments where you thought, I really loved how I felt here, or doing this, or I felt so special and magical, or something felt different. Those are all cues directing you to where your superpower lies and where your passion lies, and start noticing it. And if you can't quit your job today, start building a plan behind the scenes, how you will get there, even if it's not today. And for me, like I said, I launched my personal brand over a year before I got fired. And I started taking small steps. I went and joined a charity and started speaking and doing things on the side that were building me up and making me feel good, that started opening doors that eventually led me to be fired. However, they led me to where I am today.
What are your 3 biggest tips on creating better confidence for ourselves?
Always I start with fire the villain, because to me, that was the biggest one. And I want people to know this. Just because it was the biggest one for me doesn't mean it's the biggest one for you. Everyone has a different situation and different holdbacks. Some people run negative self-talk in their head, and that is disabling. So if that's your thing and you're always putting yourself down or saying, oh, I'm such an idiot, okay, that has to stop. You need to write out specific ways that you're going to speak to yourself, and then run that tape 8 times a day. This is how media works. This is how McDonald's gets you to go in. Use that same information and technology on you, on the platform you own and curate, and run those ads in your head 8 times a day. I am unbelievable. I am so proud of me for creating confidence every day. Whatever your talk is going to be, write it down, say it to yourself, and do it with frequency. Frequency sells and messaging. So become your own advocate and rewrite that negative self-talk. There's another, surrounding yourself with people that are so far ahead of you. That's a big, big one of mine. I launched my own podcast, Creating Confidence. And I'm around these unbelievable people now every week that are so far ahead of me. And the more I'm around them, the more growth and potential I see for myself. So I used to think, surround yourself with people that support you. Well, yes, of course, you want to do that. But it's also really important to surround yourself with people that are way ahead of you. And if you can't get in touch with them, watch their podcasts, watch their shows. We can all go to YouTube to surround ourselves with anybody that we want, right? The content's there. That's the beautiful thing about the era in which we live. People will say, I can't get a mentor, they won't respond to me. Well, then don't wait for them to respond, and load their channel and start digging into their content every day. And now you're with them. You're learning from them regardless of if you met them yet. And then create the vision and manifest that you are going to meet this person, and start putting it out to the world. So everyone's got different challenges in regards to their confidence. But I'll tell you, for me, it's firing the villain. It's surrounding myself with people that are so far ahead of me. And the final one for me is, when my instinct talks to me, take action on it. Then it can be the craziest things, but when my instinct tells me, Heather, you better do this. If I don't do it, in any moment, you're going to create confidence or chip away at it. And I know if my instinct says, Heather, do this, and I say no, I'm chipping away at my confidence. I'm chipping away at me. I'm chipping away at believing in myself.
You're out of integrity with yourself when you're not listening. Yes.
Absolutely. So when I take action on that, which I always do now, and I didn't used to, I'm reminding myself that it doesn't matter what the outcome is. It matters that this is going to start a domino effect in my life that is just me creating more confidence and becoming stronger, and more great things are going to happen. And for me, those, I would say, are the best steps to take.
I love it. I love it. This has been so great. I'm so thankful that you came on today and shared with us about gaining greater confidence. Where can everybody find your book and your course?
Sure. So my book is on Amazon. There's an Audible version, a paperback, a hardcover, and a Kindle. It's called Confidence Creator, and you'll love it. You can check out the reviews online on Amazon. My website is heathermonahan.com, and that will steer you to everything. My course, my podcast, everything that my book's on there as well. So, you can find everything at heathermonahan.com, and I'm on social media at Heather Monahan.
I love it. I love it. And I just really love how you brought out, how our worst moments, our breakdowns, like you say in the book, can be our breakthroughs. And that everybody out there, if you really want to do something like I'm doing or like Heather's doing, or just kind of get out of the place you're in, I just really encourage you to focus on what you can do and not what you can't. Just focus on all the small steps, like Heather said today.
It's so true, because we freeze ourselves. And when we say, oh, they can do that because I bet she had money, or I bet she had someone helping, or I bet this, or, any excuse we want to come up with. But the real truth is, take that small step today. Start, with your LinkedIn profile, and start, putting content out there about, how you want to help people, and the value you can bring others. And just watch that when you take those small steps, big things start happening.
Yeah, absolutely. And it looks like your career is really taking off. My last question is, what is your next book?
So my next book right now, the working title is Confidence Creator, The Next Level. And it's all about what's happened since that day I got fired, and the epic fails, losses, challenges, fears that I had to endure, and how I overcame them to get where I am today. Because I've grown more in the past 2 years than I did in the last 20. And what I want to share with people is that fear and those risks, and that taking the chances to get to that next level is so worth it versus staying in that same place for 20 years. Please don't make that mistake that I made.
That is perfect, and a perfect note to end on. Thanks everybody for listening to The Sisterhood of Sweat with Heather Monahan. Make sure to get a copy of the book and give us a great review in iTunes, and let us know how much you enjoyed this episode. Bye everybody.